Are we ready to go?
Yep.
Okay, Tina, you want to come on up?
No. We need to let everybody greet each other first.
We do that afterwards.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Oh, it gives everybody more time to do it. Greet each other first.
We'll get back to you.
I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm starting to sweat.
Oh, okay. Everybody just go ahead and greet your neighborly neighbor.
No, I thought we were doing I don't know. Because last week we did the greeting afterwards, but we didn't call someone. I don't know.
You want to right hand, left hand?
Something like that.
Rick, are you old enough to remember those old folks on the family song?
Yes.
That's what I feel like I'm doing.
Afraid, for I am your God, I will strengthen you.
It is hot.
My mom was like,
Oh, she has no clothes on. Oh, she does actually.
Oh, yeah. And they were cassettes, so this is a while.
74 and 70.
All right. Good morning. Welcome to Lapeer Community Church. We are so glad you're here. We've got several children in the auditorium for the purpose of memorizing verses. So this week's activity with memorizing verses, I'm going to invite Tina Hall up, and she's going to do this week's tool or activity for memorizing your scripture.
Hawaii on Friday night. In fact, when Rick called me, I'm going to actually talk about Aloha. When Rick called me, I was actually still in Hawaii, and he was like, will you do this activity? And I was like, that sounds really fun, sure. But then I was also thinking, it will force me to get up early on Sunday, because if anyone who's been to Hawaii, there's a 6-hour time difference. And so I was like, that's great, because it means I won't sleep in. I can get back on Michigan time, but that means that right now in Hawaii, it's 4 a.m. So I'm like very tired and very jet lagged. So if this activity is like, I can't even figure out this headset. I'm like, this is very complicated for me. Okay, good. I keep fiddling with it. So we'll see. And also now I have to review the longest verse ever with you guys on 4 hours of sleep. So if I mess it up, we'll just blame it on that. So do we have the graphic up to review last week?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and put the first graphic up for last week's verse.
Okay, so we'll read it together, and then we'll take the graphic away and recite it all together. So, ready? So, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Are we saying the Luke 41:10 part? Or Isaiah? Sorry, the other one. Isaiah 41:10. That way we remember where it is. Okay, now take away the graphic. You guys all got it, right?
Sure.
Okay, let's do it. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Isaiah 41:10. So listen, if I can get that while I was in Hawaii and I'm very little sleep, then you guys should be able to get it too, right? Okay, so for our next week's activity, Melissa put together some lovely puzzles. And so what I was thinking that we could do as a group is, in Hawaii, everyone hears aloha. What does aloha mean? It means hello and goodbye, but it actually means a lot more than that. If you ever go to Hawaii, you'll notice that they actually talk about the spirit of aloha all the time. And it's such a God thing. Every time I heard people talking about the spirit of aloha, it's this idea of constantly giving compassion and love with the idea of unity and with the idea of not expecting there's an obligation to receive it in return. And that's such a God thing, right? He wants us to love. And first of all, he loves us all the time, but he wants us to constantly be loving and giving compassion, and he wants us to be together. And so I thought we could do this activity together. We have a puzzle, and can I have 3 or 4 volunteers, not kids though, because I need people with long arms, who are not afraid to come on stage? Yeah, okay, there's one. I need 2 or 3 more. Yay, thank you. Here's 2. I need 2 more people.
All right.
Yay, okay, there's 3. Do I have one more? It might be easier with one more. One more grown-up, come on. Yay, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm each going to give you 1 or 2 puzzle pieces, but you guys can't look at them, because the rest of the audience is actually going to tell you how to arrange them so we can see what our verse is for the week, okay? And it's going to be tricky because I have fronts and backs. So hold one up and one down, and they'll tell you, don't look at them, cheater. She's a teacher, you guys, like this, one hand there. And then the rest of the group will tell you where to put it. and you get one. Okay, so if you have two, hold them, one in each hand, yes. Okay, so we have to help them put this puzzle together. So we might have to move the people, we might have to tell them to move their puzzle pieces. So you guys, come on, it's on you. I only have 4 hours of sleep, so I'm just watching the show.
Is that right? No?
Oh, good, the kids know how to do puzzles. They said, where's the uppercase letter? Well, help them out, tell them. Okay, let's give everybody names for those of you who don't know. This is Ron. This is Bob. Stacy. Kim. So just tell them their names. Just say, Bob, do this, or whatever, and move them around. What do you think, Melissa? Okay, then you got to tell them to flip it around, because they can't look at their pieces. Good job. Okay. Go, yeah, just yell out instructions. Good job. So we got the verse. You guys actually kind of messed up the puzzle, but that's all right because you got the verse. Because this is an edge over here, so it actually goes like this. But that's all right because you guys got the verse. So I had them organized by person, so we would like not have to play a game of Twister up here. But it kind of all right. So let's read the verse, and then if you can see it. So. Do to others as you would have them do unto you. Luke 6:31. And now it's like a kind of a tangled mess. But that's all right. You guys did an awesome job. Let's give everyone a round of applause. And Melissa actually has an envelope with puzzle pieces for each family to take home. So you guys can do it together as a family and learn this verse. Thank you so much, you guys. You did an awesome job.
So yeah, one per family. So raise your hands if you are one household, you have one puzzle per family. All right, this morning we are starting with a song called Come and Let Your Presence. And the idea is this, is that the scriptures say that God inhabits he inhabits the praises of his people, not the preaching of his preacher, right? So like experiencing God, one of the ways to experience God is really through corporate worship where we sing together. And so we just want to get in a place where your heart's in the right place and you're focused on worshiping him, and that we sing. And this is something God wants us to do for all eternity. So we sing on Sunday mornings as a part of preparation for all eternity and pleasing him because it pleases his heart. So go ahead and we'll just pray and then we'll stand.
The kids can be released first.
Yeah. Get out of here. Look at them run. It doesn't take them very long to get out of here. It's like they don't really want to be in here anyway, right? So let's go ahead and stand up. We'll pray. Father in heaven, I'm so grateful that you sent your Son, and we are here to praise you and worship you and give you thanks for all that you have done for us. Pray, Lord, that you would help our hearts be in the right place, that we're focused on you and not all the things that we need to do or those troubles or the trials we have. We let those things aside and just focus on how great you truly are and how much you truly love us. Amen.
So come and let your presence fill our praise, fill our praise. Come and let your presence fill this place. Come and let your presence fill our praise, fill our praise. Come and let your presence fill this place. Let's do it again. So come and let your presence fill our praise, fill our praise. Come and let your presence fill this place. Come and let your presence fill our praise, fill our praise. Come and let your presence fill this place. To give you highest praise, highest praise. We have come to love you in this place. We have come to give you highest praise, highest praise. We have come to love you in this place. For you are the one we want to meet. Jesus, shine through all the praises fill our praise, fill our praise. Come and let your presence fill this place. Come and let your presence fill our praise, fill our praise. Come and let your presence fill this place. Creation suddenly articulate with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry. Then from north to south and east to west we'd hear Christ be magnified. Where the whole earth echoing his eminence, his name would burst from sea and sky. From If it puts me in the fire, I'll rejoice 'cause you're there too. I won't be formed by feelings, I'll hold fast to what is true. If the cross brings transformation, you can hang me there with you. I won't be bow to idols, I'll stand strong and worship you. If it puts me in the fire, then I'll rejoice 'cause you're there too. I won't be formed by feelings, I'll hold fast to what is true. If the cross brings transformation, you can hang me there with you. It's the doorway into resurrection life. If I join you in your suffering, then I'll join you when you rise. When you return in glory with all the angels and the saints, my heart will still be singing, my song will be the same. Oh, Christ be magnified, let his praises rise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified, let his praises rise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me.
From the highest of heights to the depth of the sea, creation's revealing your majesty. From the colors of fall to the fragrance of spring, every creature unique in the song that it sings, all exclaiming, indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. All powerful, untamable, awestruck we fall to our knees as we humbly proclaim. You are amazing, God. Who has told every lightning bolt where it should go? Or seen heavenly storehouses laden with snow? Who imagined the sun and gives source to its light, yet conceals it to bring us the coolness of night? None can fathom, indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. beautiful, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. Incomparable, unchangeable. You see the depth of my heart and you love me the same. You are amazing, God. Let's sing that part again. And you see the depths of my heart and you love me the same. You are amazing, God. You are amazing, God. You see the depth of my heart and you love me the same. You are amazing, God.
So I think it's pretty safe to say that nothing up here has gone as we've planned, but our worship cannot be taken away. So I just ask that you join us in this last song, because no matter what happens, our praises can still be lifted and our hearts can still be open to Him. God, we thank you so much that we are not defined or held back by circumstances or when things don't go as we planned. We don't have to be thrown off because you are unchangeable, you are faithful. God, we thank you so much. So here it is, my alabaster heart. I'm keeping nothing back from who you are. No hidden treasure veiled by key or lock. You're a lifetime worth of worship, and it's only just the start. And here it is, my every waking day. The minutes, hours, the years of endless praise. For you're worthy far beyond all I could say. There's a lifetime worth of worship in the nuance of your names. Let it rise like incense, my whole life a fragrance, every ounce here broken at your feet, and every breath in offering. My heart cries, these lungs sing over you, my worthy King of Kings. Oh, let it rise like incense, my whole life a fragrance, every ounce here broken at like incense. My whole life a fragrance, every ounce here broken at your feet. Every breath an offering, my heart cries this long sing over you, my worthy King of Kings. Oh, let it rise like incense. My whole life a fragrance, every ounce here broken at your feet. And every breath an offering, my heart cries these long sing over you, my worthy King of Kings. And you are worthy of it all. You are worthy of it all. For from you are all things, to you are all things. You deserve the glory. You are worthy of it all. You are worthy of it all. For from you are all things, to you are all things. You deserve the glory. Let's do that one last time, just the voices. You are worthy of it all. You are worthy of it all. For from you are all things, to you are all things. You deserve the glory. We thank you. You are so good. You may be seated.
Can you hear me now? Oh, good. All right, so we are memorizing our verses. How many guys felt last week's verse was a little hard? I struggled. I was still working on it this morning, actually, just trying to get the length of that verse down because it was definitely longer than all the other ones. This week's shouldn't be a problem. You should have it done by now, right? If you don't know the golden rule, you haven't lived in America, right? Because, this is, all over the place. Do unto others, you would have others do unto you. And it's pretty simple. But I kind of want to read the context for this verse because we know the verse so well, we don't actually know how Jesus is actually applying that verse. But I'm going to mention this first, is that throughout the world in ancient times, there was golden rules already expressed long before Jesus did, but it was a little different. Jesus, if it isn't original, sometimes he makes it more extreme. Okay, so the other ones from ancient wisdom literature and things like that would kind of go like this: don't do to others what you don't want other people to do to you. Okay? So it's like a passive thing. You don't have to do anything. Just make sure when you do stuff, you don't do stuff you would want people not to do to you. You don't want when people do that to you, don't do it to somebody else. That's the way it kind of works. But Jesus actually takes it and turns it into a proactive thing and says, do, not don't do, right? So do unto others as you would have them do unto you. All of a sudden, now we've got stuff to do. You can't just wait for somebody to do something bad to you and decide you wouldn't do that same thing back. Or you can't decide, I won't do this to somebody else because I wouldn't want them to do that to me. Yes, that applies, but you can't just sit back and wait, because you could obey the other commandment by doing nothing, right? If I do nothing to nobody, never, I've never done anything to anybody else that I've never wronged anybody else in ways they wouldn't want to wrong me. Now the change is that, okay, now Jesus says, it's not good enough. I'm going to up the ante. You go do something. You go and treat people the way you want to be treated. All right? So now, it kind of reminds me of that phrase, your mom always used to say, if you can't say something nice, and when I was in college, I said, if I can't say something mean, I won't say anything at all. Right? But it's kind of that difference. That's the difference. If I can't say anything mean because I don't want somebody to say something mean to me, I won't say anything at all. But the other one is like, say something nice. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. But Jesus said you're supposed to say something nice. But in the context is really extreme. So hold on, because you're going to think, and none of us think Jesus is nuts here, but anybody who does this would be considered crazy. All right? So here we go. I'm going to back up to verse 27 in chapter 6. So if you open up Luke chapter 6 in your Bibles, or you can pull out your phone, or you can, be lazy and look at the screen. Just kidding. Just kidding. So, okay, starting in verse 27. But you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. That by itself is pretty rough. And it's really unique. There is nobody else in the history of the world that said, love your enemies. Nobody till Jesus. Jesus was the only fool crazy enough to say, hey, love the people that crucify you. That's what he's doing here. He's saying, love your enemies. And then he starts to describe what loving your enemies looks like. Because for me, loving my enemies is leaving them alone. Right? Because you deserve a whole lot. And if I just leave you alone, just count that as about as much love as I can give you. Right? But Jesus is actually far more extreme. So those who are listening, which is kind of critical because most people don't want to listen to this, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you. So now you're supposed to not just not kill your enemy. To love your enemy, you're supposed to do good to those who hate you. When's the last time you did that? I have to think a really long time. Right? And then it says, pray for those who mistreat you. I've done that a little bit more. God smite them, almighty smiter, right? So I have prayed for those who curse me and try and take me down. I pray God touch them in such a way so they can stop cursing me. Bless them, almighty blesser, but just bless them in a way so they just stop, right? So then it says, if someone slaps you on the cheek, turn the other also. Now, we've always heard the phrase, turn the other cheek. This is where it comes from. It's actually like turn the other jaw, because it's actually much more violent. That part, cheek, is really the jawbone. So, how many people slap a jaw or get punched in the jaw? It's probably a punch. Okay, it's a violent hit to the face. And you're supposed to stand up and say, okay. And the thing is that let's be honest, no one would do that. Right? I'll just lay here and be glad that I don't get up and kick you in the schnazzles. So, that's how I would want to act. But nobody gets up and say, and if we did, if somebody hit me on one cheek, right? I'd be is that all you got? It would still be not love. It would still be give me your best shot again. That's why I'm saying this is nuts. This is nuts. But he says, all of you who are listening, he doesn't say I ask you, I tell you, love your enemies. It's a command. Do good to those who hate you. Command. Bless those who curse you. Command. Pray for those who mistreat you. It's a command. All right? Then it says, and in the Greek, it's all specific verbs. They're all commanding verbs. They're not like contextual things. It's just like blatant. Do this, do this, do this, do this. Lord and master to servant, slave. Okay? So we don't have a choice here. Then it says, if someone slaps you on the cheek, command, turn to them the other also. If somebody takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Now, last I've heard, how many guys have a coat that's stolen? Not too often, right? Right? So, I think about this, in school, there was a girl that had, tennis shoes can be pretty expensive, right? I don't know how expensive they get, but I know, there's some, uber expensive tennis shoes, and there was a girl in school that had a pair of tennis shoes. She was the only one who had this pair of Vans or whatever in the school, and the next day after they disappeared, there was another girl posting on her Snapchat or whatever her brand new shoes of Vans was exactly like the ones that went missing. And he had to go through all this rigmarole to try and get the shoes back. So, if this is your kid, okay, this is the way we would struggle. It's it's not good for that kid to get away with that. So we have to make sure we get those shoes back and she gets called out so she doesn't get away with stealing. And so we justify doing the opposite of what this says. Right? So if we were to do this, so let's say I spent $250 on a pair of tennis shoes for my daughter. Some girl steals them. To be biblical, I would say give her your socks. She probably wouldn't want them, but you give something else as well. Okay? But we can find justifiable reasons and logical reasons why this is a bad idea. And they're all really logical and reasonable ideas. They really are. It's give to somebody who steals from you something, if he steals this, give him that as well. It's extreme. But you can also reason why that's a bad idea. But Jesus, he doesn't say, think through this. Pray about it. If he steals your coat, you pray for the Spirit to lead you, whether you're supposed to go call the authorities and get your coat back and then be kind enough not to press charges. He just says, no, just give him your shirt as well. There's no room for other options, right? Because this is loving your enemies, right? So then we get down, we're going to go further. Give to everyone who asks you. Whenever has that been a good idea? Right? It doesn't say, give to some who ask you, but to everyone who asks you. And then logically, if I do that, Lord, I won't have anything left to give. Right? Because if people know I give to whoever asks, I'm going to lock myself away so that nobody has a way to get to me to ask. This is so illogical. Jesus is dumb, right? I'm this is extreme. So now, in the context, so let me get down a little further. So give to everyone who asks you, and anyone who takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. So back to the Van tennis shoes. Don't demand them back. Somebody takes something, you let them have it. Do to others as you would have them do to you. So that's the context of that verse. You see what I'm saying? Now granted, if I come to your house and steal your car, you're supposed to give me the keys. Right? Or the trailer that goes along with it or something. If I steal from you, you're supposed to give it back to me. And you're not supposed to do anything except for wave as I pull your stolen vehicle out of the driveway. And that's doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. We're just lucky that there's not that many people that are just out to take all my stuff, you know? But being a Christian is supposed to be so different that Jesus is illustrating how different we should really be. We should be nuts. In a way, it just seems crazy, right? So then you go on a little further. If you liked that, wait till you see what's coming. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. Right? You take the worst moms and worst dads, and they still love their children. They might be terrible at being a parent, but they still do love their children. And you're like, it's normal for people to love their own, right? We're supposed to be beyond that. It's like, it says, if you only love the people who love you back, you're not being different at all. And that's the point. You're not any different. And if you're one of his followers, you're supposed to be different. Then it says this, it says, even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners expecting to be repaid in full. Right? But we lend, and they don't pay us back, and we go back and say, you owe me. Right? And like I said, logically, it's totally justifiable. If I let them get away with this isn't helping them at all, right? This is just letting them live in a corrupt life where they're getting away with murder, right? They can steal. Why get a job? I can just take, or I don't even have to take. I can just go ask them for it, and they're supposed to give it to me, right? Sometimes it's just so, like, the Sabbath in the Old Testament, where the Jews were not allowed to work on the Sabbath, when everybody figured out that they weren't allowed to work on the Sabbath, guess when the nations that were their enemies decided to attack? On Saturday, when they weren't allowed to work. It's like, I don't get you at all. Make me sit down while we're being attacked. And I'm not allowed to get up and get my tools or my weapons or anything and fight back. Now, they did. They ended up fighting on the Sabbath because that's what they ended up doing. But the thing was, they were commanded they're supposed to work on the Sabbath, and they were attacked on the Sabbath because even if some disobeyed the commandment, there would be those who would sit there and not work or not resist. Now, go on. Verse 35, but love your enemies, do good to them, and lead them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High. Because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful just as your heavenly Father, or just as your Father is merciful. So it's going through all of these things, these extreme things. And when we get away from this, we will listen to our own justification. We won't stop. And I don't know the answer to all of this. It's like if I lived in the Ukraine right now, would I pick up a weapon and defend my country, or would I love my enemy? Would you? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, but it's all over the Bible. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, not yours. And when God tells the Jews to fight, he tells them right out, you fight, you kill, you destroy. And it's extreme when he decides to do that. But when he tells them not to fight, they're not supposed to fight. Right? And there's just there's these extreme things that God asks us to do that just seem so unreasonable. I'm like, God, I struggle. So what does it take to live this way? I mean, it first takes a relationship with God that's authentic, but it also takes a dependency on him where you're so dependent on him that if somebody steals your car, you know, you don't have to worry that God would actually deliver another one if you needed it, and that God could convict that guy or that woman or somebody who stole from you and return it. You know, it's it was Abraham Lincoln was famous because when after the Civil War was over, he wanted to invest money and resources into the South and rebuild the South. And there was a woman that was angry with him, saying there are enemies. You're supposed to destroy our enemies. And he said, I am. I destroy my enemies by making them my friends. Now, that has an agenda aside from it. You know, obviously you can be kind to those who hate you so that they don't hate you anymore. And I remember there were times that I like all of us, like there are times that as a Christian, I didn't live anything like a Christian. There were just times I behaved in ways that were inappropriate. And I was, when I became a Christian in college, I was very vocal about it. I mean, I told everybody, the Jewish guy that taught guitar lessons, have discussions with him about being a follower of Christ. And I let all the students know. I would go to parties with my Bible in hand, ready to talk to them about Jesus. I mean, I was like very, very, very evangelistic in college. So everybody knew. My professors all knew. They all saw the transformation. They saw a young man who was like in marching band, difficult to get along with, and dropping F-bombs in the middle of halftime shows when I made mistakes or whatever. Just, there's nothing Christian about me. And then, like, everybody goes home for Christmas, and they come back, and I'm completely different. And so everybody knows you can't escape this. You know, it's kind of like driving around town cutting people off with fish stickers all over your car. You know, it's like I had plastered myself with fish stickers, and like now people watch. And I graduated and I went to teach school, and a few years later I got a job, a pretty decent job at a school system that was a little bit further, a little actually closer to the college. And it was a program that had potential. And when they hired me, one of my professors thought that I was a terrible hire, that I didn't deserve the job or whatever, something like that. And I was told, you know, not to tell anybody that they said this, but I was so enraged. I wrote that professor a letter, scathing letter. And I ripped that professor so bad, and then he went back to the person who told the person who told me, who came back to me, weren't no happy. Just really upset. And then I felt really bad, and then I had to go knock on that professor's door and ask forgiveness. Doesn't change the fact I didn't treat him the way I'd want to be treated. Because like I said this before, in Ecclesiastes is a verse. This is when memorizing verses. I don't know them exactly, but I know about where they are and I know about what they say. Is do not listen to every word your servant says, otherwise you will hear your servants cursing you. For you yourself know you've cursed others. So it's not like I probably have said some things that were unkind about that professor before, and if that got back to him, maybe he would have failed me or wrote me a nasty letter or whatever. I don't know. But what I did was criticizing a man for something that I've actually done before, right? Except the difference is, you know what the difference is? He did it to me, and I found out about it. So therefore I have the right to lash out. And you don't. You don't. And so that was pretty darn humbling. And even though I asked forgiveness, and that's a demonstration of Christian walk, it still doesn't take away what I did as a Christian. I still did it. Still did unto somebody else that I don't want to do it to me. And we can be so hurt by other people, and we can look at all of these things and justify behaviors that the scriptures, for the most part, don't justify. You know, just don't justify. Now, I remember once actually going to a retreat with other pastors, and there was a pastor that was so hurt by the people in his church over and over and over, and he said, I love God, but man, I just do not like his people. And Scott, who led the retreat, said, well, then you don't love God. He goes, how do you get that? He goes, well, because of the scriptures. Because in John, 1 John, it says, how can you say you love God whom you cannot see and hate your brother whom you can see? And the guy was just, oh. He knew that verse before, right? He just had never applied it to the situation he was in where people hurt him. And all of a sudden, you forget verses that are convicting. You forget the verses that you don't need at that moment. And he just said, I can't stand his people, I hate his people, or whatever. I can't remember exactly how he said it, but it was actually contrary to what the Scriptures said. If you're a follower of Jesus Christ, you don't have the choice to hate. And the truth is, we have trouble enough loving our own family members, let alone our enemies, correct? Right? It is really, really difficult to love the people closest to me, the ones that should, of all people, that should treat me the way I would want to treat them and all that kind of stuff. The golden rule stuff should be easiest to your parents or your children or your siblings or your spouse, and we don't. And so we live in a world where the norm, it's like gravity, man. You're like, it's going to happen. Like if I just give away people every time they ask, I'm going to lose everything I have, right? It's so easy to justify that God is wrong. But he's not wrong if we say we're his followers. How can he be wrong? Right? If we question him on this, what else do we need to question him on? Because if he's wrong here, we just knocked him down from godhood to he's an immortal, fallible being that I know better. I know better. I know how the world works, God, you don't know. We don't say that, but we act that way. We act that way, and we should be convicted. And we can say, well, yes, all of us do this stuff. Yes, we do. All of us defend ourselves. All of us would go back and get our stuff or call in a police report. Look, there's so many times, like our house is in town, and there's been a couple times the front of my house has been egged, and like hours getting egg off my house and thinking about installing cameras to catch the little pieces of whatever's who did it. Because I'm angry. Right? And trust me, if I prayed for them, it wasn't a prayer that I would want somebody praying for me. And I can say that. I wasn't planning this. But when I was in college, it was before I was a Christian, thankfully. So I lived in a fraternity house on a corner of a street. It was a white house, and we had a deposit. It was like $800 deposit on that house as a fraternity house. And then we moved to another house when the lease was up, and they didn't give us any of that money back. And we spent hours cleaning that house to get it ready to get some of that back. I was so mad. Some of my friends and I, who happened to drink too much, found paint in one of the closets in the new house we had. And we went to that house in the middle of the night, and we painted Greek letters all over that house. But it wasn't our Greek letters. It was our hated rivals. And the next day, in the newspaper, front page is this picture of this house. Like, I was so scared. I was terrified that we would get caught and I'd go to jail or something. And years later, a few years later, I became a Christian, and I actually felt convicted, and I went to try and find the guy to tell him that I need to paint your house. Because what he did, took a roller and just rolled over the Greek letters. So it had all these white patches all over the house. So two-tone white. And I'm thinking, I have to paint this house. I couldn't find him, but I tried. But here I am. I painted on a house, angry about somebody throwing eggs at my house. You see? I'm like, and angry, like they had no right to do this to my house. Like I had a right to just paint Greek letters over somebody else's house. We are born hypocrites, right? We are born hypocrites. And the reality is that when you surrender your life to Christ, when you decide, I am all in, God, I am yours, you are mine, life changes permanently. And it changes in ways that are sometimes really difficult. And this is like at the top of the list of difficulties. Love your neighbor as yourself. It's one thing to love your neighbor, right? And there's like a Pharisee that questioned Jesus, like, well, who's my neighbor then? So I can figure out which ones I actually have to be nice to, right? And he lays out a whole parable about the man who's attacked on the side of the road, left for dead, and all the religious people go around because they don't feel like, I'm too busy, God has taken me somewhere else or whatever, it's not my responsibility, whatever. And then the non-Christian, horrible Samaritan, enemy of Israel, goes and takes care of him to shame the Pharisee who even asked. Now, who was the neighbor to the man who had fallen? So, like, it wasn't who your neighbor is. It's like, it wasn't who your neighbor was. It's just you just treat everyone like they're your neighbor, right? And then he says, I'm going to up the ante and say, love your enemy, right? So it's like, I can't. So for me, like I have a recent example where somebody did something to me that I felt was very wrong in a public way, kind of, and group text. And so then I just went in the group text and I justified it and called out that person's error in the same group chat. What I just did was I didn't like being pointed out in a group, and so then I pointed him out in a group. So I did unto him as he did unto me, which was the opposite of what the Scripture says to do, right? The opposite. And the thing is that isn't even my enemy. It's like, I don't know how often I violate this, but I do. And I find ways to justify it. There's like, here's the thing. If you go extreme and you decide to love your enemies, it leaves room for God to be larger than life. Leaves room for God to be God. To take care of your needs if you're really losing everything. To change your enemies into friends or change your enemies into Christians. And maybe they don't. But it still glorifies God in a way that, when Jesus did this, Jesus loved his enemies. He's on the cross. Father, forgive them for they don't know what they're doing, right? Those lowlifes that are putting Jesus on the cross, he is dying for them. So it isn't like Jesus says, I want you to love your enemies while I destroy mine. No. Love your enemies because I'm dying for my enemies. And the Bible's very clear is that while we were his enemies, he loved us. And I know that when I first read that as a younger Christian, I'm like, well, I wasn't God's enemy. I didn't understand who I really was. I was his enemy. I didn't trust him. I didn't believe in him. I didn't do the things that he wanted. I did what I wanted, and then I prayed for him when I wanted stuff from him. I acknowledge your God when you give me what I want. That's like kind of worse than an enemy. Just use him. At the end of the day, we all have to recognize being a Christian is supposed to be very different. It's supposed to be very, very different. And none of us are different enough. And we really need to spend time with God and wrestle with this. Say, God, show me how to be more like you. Show me how to love my enemies. And this is one of the things you could do, is you live your life looking for enemies to do good to them instead of waiting for enemies to get upset about. You could actually say, okay, today, God, show me an enemy I can do good to. Now you're looking for opportunities to do it. It's a different way of living than reacting to somebody who does something bad to you. Because if somebody does bad to you, so somebody punches you on the right cheek, if you're not prepared to turn the left, you won't, right? But if you wake up and say, God, I'm waiting for somebody to hit me so that I can turn the other cheek and actually see whether I got the wherewithal to do that, I can do it. But if I'm not thinking this way, I'm not walking with God in this way, that opportunity comes up, I'll blow it. I'll call the police, right? And trust me, this messes with my head because I'm glad there are police to call. So I'm like, But somehow there's a way to walk with God where you can do this. And we should wrestle with it. We should say, God, I'm struggling with this. That's okay. Say, God, if I'm interpreting this wrong, show me, but it looks pretty clear. Do, command, do, command, do, command. And walking with God should be very, very different than walking in the world and taking a hold of all your rights. Because Jesus gave up all his rights. He broke a ton of laws to crucify Jesus. He could have applied the law. They tried him 2 times quickly to try and obey the law, but they did it in a time frame that didn't allow for enough time to pass so they could crucify him before the Sabbath and everything. They sandwiched the time it normally would take to kill somebody, so they rushed everything. And that's why it's like the middle of the night when they're before Pilate. Was either Pilate or Herod, I can't remember. But anyway, they broke laws to do that. And then he still said, I could get 12 legions of angels to stop this anyway. He could have stopped it, but didn't. And it was absolutely the will of the Father. But he is calling us to live like him. He is calling us to live like him. And so I think we just need to recognize, and like for me this week, I was so justified in the text I sent. And I then I have to look at the verse I memorized for the week. And then I read the context. I'm like, oh, crud. Well, I've got an illustration for my message anyway, right? But it's hard. It's really hard. And it isn't like God doesn't know that. He does know it's hard. But he still said it. And we still say we're his followers. We're supposed to be like him. Let me take a moment and pray, and I'm just going to give you guys some silent space. You can just kind of talk to God about this. So why don't you go ahead and bow your heads. And in your own, just ask God to bring up maybe circumstances you can't see, where he was intending you to love someone when you trusted them, or where you treated them in the opposite way God really wanted you to treat them. Think of, God, just bring up episodes where I still carry emotions, where I feel I'm justifiably angry and not loving my enemy. I want you to just take some time praying. God, say, okay, how do you want me to respond in love towards the names that God has brought up to you? Father in heaven, I pray you capture our hearts in such a way that our whole heart is yours. And that you would help us, that we would trust our heart with you, that when our heart is broken, when somebody hurts us or when somebody steals from us or somebody does that we can love and allow you to be the one that protects our heart, meets our every single need, that we would be living, breathing examples of your Son, Jesus Christ, walking here on earth. Pray, Lord, you forgive us for all the times that we have lived in ways, walked in ways, spoken in ways that are, in our minds, we justify it, but we're not representing you very well. And so, Father, forgive us. And turn our hearts, just melt our hearts for those who have done evil to us, or to have hurt us, or have stolen from us, or whatever it is, Lord. I pray that you would help us forgive and then guide us in the way to how we should treat them in love. And change us from the inside out in such a way that this would be the way we would live tomorrow. That we could wake up tomorrow looking for ways to love those who despise us, to love those who seek to hurt us. That we would not harbor any bitterness inside us that would seek revenge or retribution, but that you would give us such a heart of love that we would not just out of obedience be kind to our enemies, but actually love our enemies. That you would help us put our heart into it. But we can't do that unless you just create a heart in us that's able to, Lord. So we're dependent. We are fully dependent on you to be able to do this. We beg you, Lord, to do this in Jesus' name. Amen. We will go ahead and take up. I was going to do an offering. I haven't done an offering in a few years, but I'll do communion. So communion, you'll take the center aisle and go out and receive communion, and then return to your seats from the outside, and then sing out gratitude for what God has done for us. For on the night that Jesus was betrayed, he took the bread and he broke it and said, "This is my body, which is broken for you. Take, eat, in remembrance of me." When the supper was ended, he took the cup and said, "This is the blood of the new and everlasting covenant, the forgiveness of your sins. Take and drink. Do this in remembrance of me." Will you stand?
Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. Just give me Jesus. When I am alone, oh, when I am alone, oh, when I am alone, give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. Just give me Jesus. Will you stand with me? And sing this chorus with us again. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. Just give me Jesus. In the morning, when I rise, in the morning, when I rise, in the morning, when I rise, give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. Just give me Jesus. You can have all this world. Just give me Jesus. You may be seated.
Put together with your family or just have fun with that, you can do that. They're not going to be like those 500-piece puzzles that you do for fun, but you can take one home if there's any left. And then we have the August and September prayer calendar. It's ready. I believe that's back there by the offering box. So right by the tech booth back there, there's a booth there where you can put offering if you'd like to. And I believe there's also the calendars, the prayer family calendar is available. Melissa's got those printed up. If you don't see them back there, ask Melissa. She'll have those there as well. All right? She's left for the day. So don't go see Melissa. See Chris instead. Chris will be the one that gets blamed for everything that goes wrong because Melissa's gone. So do unto her as you would have. Do unto yourself, right? So there you go. No. So anyway, those are available. I'm really grateful for all the work Melissa does. She puts a lot into the children's ministry and family ministry so that you can minister to your own children in ways that are creative and fun. So you guys have a great week. Thanks for coming.